and set aside the ones that they can't. And so my monitor, behind the scenes for the first blooper, I have my laptop right here with the script on the screen. And as I was doing that take out of the corner of my eye, I saw it go into like little darker idle. I'm about to go, you know, to shut off the screen. And by the time I finished the take, it went dark, and that took the next line out of my head. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Hello there, heroes. I'm the Orange Ranger, and welcome to another Power Rangers Hyperforce session review. The excitement was a little higher than usual for this week's session, as another guest star joined the ranks. Now, who this guest star was announced from the very beginning, and they were on the set as soon as things got started. But I like a good story and working things in as they happen, so I'll save who exactly it was for when we reach that point in the story. For now, let's take a look at the 4th session of Hyperforce, Chaos at the Coliseum. We start with the Rangers still in the library helping to clean up the mess from their recent battle. They find a whole bunch of books that are charred and damaged, holes punched in the middle of them, and just really messed up. Chloe suggests that maybe they should just burn these books rather than try to fix them, but Jack reminds her that these books are a part of history. They fix the ones that they can and set aside the ones that they can't, so maybe future generations can fix them. The little girl that we've seen several times now comes back, pointing Marv out to her parents and saying that he's the one that said that she was so brave. She asks what happened, and Vesper tells her that an alien attacked. The others are once again left diving to cover her honesty, saying that Vesper is a science fiction writer, and this was just a reenactment of one of her books. Marv finally pulls Vesper aside and asks her to please stop blabbing every little detail about the future. Vesper is confused, saying that Power Rangers are supposed to be honest. He says this is true, but it's endangering their mission. Can she be more subtle about it? You know, not necessarily lying, but just not divulging every single bit of information. She says that she'll try. The Rangers start discussing their mission, forgetting that the little girl is still standing right there. She asks them what they're talking about, and they refocus their attention on her. Chloe offers her a burrito from her jacket pocket, which the little girl understandably doesn't want, but she does say that since Vesper is a science fiction writer, she does like being read to. Vesper decides to grab whatever the closest book to hand is. Malika has her roll. That roll is a 1, so the book is a book about ancient Roman history. Vesper starts reading it to her, with the little girl even interrupting Chloe's interjection and saying that she does want to hear this story. But Vesper finds it a little dry as well, so she decides to cut to the chase. Things are weird for a little while, but then you make it to about the year 3000 and life is fantastic. The girl finds that a little strange, but the others all encourage her and she leaves. Then they take stock of their situation, remembering that Scorpina and Vulcanos are after Finster's magic clay. Chloe remembers from history class that Rita's palace, which for the record at this point in 1994 is actually Zed's palace, is located on the moon, or as Jack calls it, Luna Prime. Chloe calls Alpha and asks how they can make a spaceship that'll get them to the moon. Alpha doesn't know, but there's something more important anyway. Alpha's getting a strange reading on the ship's sensors. Vesper calls the little girl back into the library to say goodbye, making sure to tell her to survive into adulthood and that a karate chop to the jugular is the solution to most of your problems. Oh, by the way, the little girl's name is Diana. Jack calls her a wonder. They return to the time ship, and Alpha says that the strange reading is actually that they're receiving a transmission. As the transmission comes into view, they see it as a large crystal tube, and inside is a giant floating head. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Zordon has contacted the Hyperforce Rangers. He knows who they are, where they're from, what they did, as long as they love him. Wait. If you think about it, the two of them are actually in similar situations since Zordon is trapped in a time warp. Marv asks how he knows about them, but Zordon decides not to answer. Eddie starts explaining their situation, but since that involves information about the future, Zordon asks not to hear anymore. He's just decided to go ahead and send them some help. Maybe something in yellow. Zordon teleports Aisha Campbell, at this point the brand new Mighty Morphin Yellow Ranger, to the time ship. And this is where I can tell you that yes, Karan Ashley was the guest this week on Hyperforce, reprising her role of Aisha. Zordon asks Aisha to help this team of Power Rangers from the future, and then cuts off the transmission. No more information than necessary, the classic Zordon style. This situation is a little crazy for everyone, especially Eddie, who dang near hyperventilates being in the presence of a historic ranger. Jack even says that they've read about her in their history books, which is something that amazes her. They try to stay subtle about the exact situation of what's going on, until Alpha 55 comes running in and excitedly blabbers all of the exact details. Or, as we may come to call it, pulling a Vesper. Aisha is concerned when she hears that Scorpina is involved, since she knows that Scorpina is a very fierce warrior. They all wonder how they can get to Rita's palace on the moon, so Alpha reminds them that it is Lord Zed's palace now. Marv wonders if they can just be teleported there, but Alpha says that it's just a little too far away. Aisha tells them that's okay, they can just use her saber-toothed tiger Zord. More on that in a little bit. And wonders if these Rangers have Zords of their own. Alpha explains, an explanation that we've been waiting for by the way, that these Rangers had to leave very quickly and a lot of things were left in the future. But while whatever Zord it is can get them to the moon, they need to know where on the moon the palace actually is. Since Alpha needs some kind of energy signature to scan for, Chloe has the idea of scanning one of the books that was damaged in the library attack. She and Vesper head back down to the library, which has been taped off by the cops with the librarians telling them their story. The two Rangers dive into a bush, and Vesper decides to sneak into the library while Chloe creates a diversion. Chloe does this by running out onto the sidewalk, jumping and screaming, and throwing candy corn everywhere. By the by, they checked, and Chloe's bonus, her +1 bonus, is stealth. Whoops! She does manage to get the main officer's attention and does her best to begin flirting with him and charming him. Meanwhile, Vesper very slowly sneaks through the bushes and does get into the library, which has been cleared out. She grabs the book on Roman history as well as another book that she notices nearby, checks them out as Marv insisted instead of just taking them, and leaves. However, as she leaves, she notices that the officer is chatting up Chloe something pretty fierce and Chloe can't seem to get loose. So Vesper pulls her blade blaster and shoots one of the nearby bushes, getting the main officer's attention and allowing the two to leave. Not exactly the cleanest operation, as Aisha observes that this is a brand new team of Power Rangers, isn't it? Anyway, they start investigating the books and realize that the other book that Vesper grabbed, besides the Roman history one, seems familiar somehow. Some bad rolls stretch this out way too long, but they do eventually realize that it is the Book of Five Rings, the book that Scorpina was reading. That means that Scorpina's energy is on that book as well, which is going to help them even more. Alpha says that since the ship is low on energy, this scan is going to take some time, and rather strongly suggests that the team go train with Aisha in the Pocket Dimension. They hop into the Pocket Dimension, starting out in Chloe's My Little Ponies, Rainbows and Sprinkles and Clouds landscape. Jack's not really down with unicorns that fart sprinkles, though, so he asks for a more realistic arena. Aisha agrees and suggests Angel Grove Park. It's always weirdly empty when they visit, and they seem to get attacked there all the time for some weird reason. Vesper calls for a compromise. Angel Grove Park, but we can keep the rainbows. Marv asks for 3 civilians since Aisha said that one of the most important parts of being a Power Ranger is protecting people. Chloe yells out that one of them should be Diana. Alpha knows who this is since he's been following their adventures as they travel through Angel Grove, so he puts Diana into the simulation, along with the young officer from earlier this week, and someone they saw at the juice bar, a man with a tank top with big armpit holes in it. Marv wants a group of putties and a big guy. Alpha asks what kind of big guy, and the team thinks about having another fight with Candius Cornicus, though Vesper remembers that that was a really tough fight and maybe a little too hardcore for training. She remembers from history a monster that the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers fought, a large pig head with arms and legs. Aisha says that's Pudgy Pig and describes him for Alpha. This actually made me just realize something. Malika, as Alpha, asked the Rangers to describe Pudgy Pig so he can be programmed into the simulation. They basically asked something along the lines of, don't you have records? Don't you know what Pudgy Pig looked like? Ranger history? And Alpha says his Ranger history records don't go that far back. It actually took me until filming just now to realize what that really meant. Malika didn't know who Pudgy Pig was. I find that kind of interesting. Might need to brush up just a little bit more there, Game Master. It's morphin' time! Or is it? This is something that hadn't come up until just now, but it turns out the Rangers need to have a certain amount of energy to be able to morph, and they did not have the energy at this point in the game. However, as they pointed out, they were inside a simulation. They can do anything they want. They could just sim-morph. Malika allows it. Marv wants to team up with Chloe again, and this will be a running theme, her creating a hurricane whirlwind for him to step into and pull his Iapetus claws, a name, thank you, to blast through the putties. However, both of them roll 4s, so the attack misses. Vesper pulls her Cerberus disc, another name, and lifts Eddie into the air. He lands and instantly uses his Cobra HP attack to strike the Z-Putties on their Zs, destroying 2 of them, impressing Aisha and Malika, who tosses them some energy. The remaining putty from that group runs behind a tree for help, bringing out 2 more putties, as well as Pudgy Pig. Eddie sees the civilians are in the area and tries to clear them out, but they're in a state of shock. Not even Marv's charisma can help. Eddie asks the veteran ranger Aisha to show them how it's done, though if you think about it at this point in history, Aisha is as new to all of this as they are. She decides to do a Yellow Ranger combo attack, having Jack grab her and spin her around while she attacks the putties, and she takes out all 3. Chloe notices the civilians and she runs over to help them. She rolls double bolts, of course, not when she's attacking something, though really this was just the start of her hot hand in this session. And the officer snaps out of it and gets everybody to safety. The putties see this and attack Chloe for it, trying to copy the spinning maneuver that they saw the Yellow Rangers do. However, they never really were good at that copying thing, and they topple over. Jack decides to do the Yellow Ranger combo thing again, having Aisha jump on his Creus hammer as he spins it around. However, she can't quite get her balance on it and jumps right back off. Pudgy Pig charges at Jack and hits him with his tusks for 18 points of imaginary damage. Before round 2 can begin, Marv calls Alpha and checks on the progress of the scan. Alpha says that they're getting some interesting readings, however those readings are not coming from the moon, they're actually coming from Europe. Disappointingly for me, the team decides to put the hold on training for now, ending the session. Vesper has Alpha turn her into a giant Cerberus and she swipes at the frozen monsters. They all leave the pocket dimension, power down, and meet up with Alpha. They wonder how they can get to Europe, so Aisha reminds them that she does have a Zord. But in order to drive her Zord, she's going to have to morph again, and if you remember, she doesn't have the energy to actually do that. Malika gives her what was really much more of a weaker / nicer exception this time around, saying that Aisha observed the teamwork of the other Rangers and it just made her all warm and fuzzy inside. It reminded her of her own team and just gave her so much positive emotion, and that gives her the energy to morph. So they beam down below the ship and she does so. It's taking a break time! During that break, they ended up catching something that a lot of people were mentioning in the chat, myself included to be fair, that I think would have been kind of a big miss. Earlier in the episode, Aisha mentioned that she could use the saber-toothed tiger Zord. Aisha never actually used the saber-toothed tiger Zord. She took over the Griffin Thunder Zord, the saber-toothed tiger Griffin Thunder Zord, if you will. And actually, some people in the chat were claiming that that transformation sequence where the Dinozord turned into the Thunder Zord indicated that the Thunder Zords had two modes, Dinozord and Thunder Zord. But honestly, and I don't mean to geek out here, but the episodes where they got the Thunder Zords either directly say or at least very, very strongly imply that the Dinozords were completely transformed into the Thunder Zords. Besides, they never actually used the Dinozords when they had the Thunder Zords, so there's no proof that that was even a thing anyway. And to be honest, I would not have bought it as an explanation if nobody had caught this and she did summon the saber-toothed tiger Zord. Alpha tells them that the scans have pinpointed the location they're looking for in Rome. They hop into the Zord, with Jack ending up shoved into the bathroom somehow, and it takes off. Marv has a fantastic idea. This was such quick thinking on Peter's part. Asking Vesper to go and take scans of the Zord and use that data possibly somewhere down the line in order to make them Zords. Vesper heads down to take a look at the Zord's components, but she can't really make heads or tails of anything due to kind of a bad roll by Christina. But Chloe comes down and rolls really well and notices the engine and its components, and especially the fact that it is using Yellow Ranger energy. Vesper takes a 3D image of this with her morpher, and the two of them leave to find food. They arrive just outside Rome, and they get a real feeling as they see down into the city of the ancient buildings and just the really strong history of that location. Alpha has detected 2 energy readings, approaching very fast from the direction they just came, heading towards Rome. They get out of the Zord, and the Zord leaves. The Rangers see a bus nearby with tourists getting on board for a big tour of the city with multiple stops along the way. However, this is when the chat noticed something very interesting. Remember that Aisha morphed in order to drive the Zord. She never actually powered down. However, for the sake of the story, we can believe that she just demorphed when she got out of the Zord. It does make sense. Anyway, the Rangers get off the bus at the Coliseum, and Chloe instantly runs over to get some gelato from a nearby stand. By the way, true story, not making this up, the night this session aired, I had bought some key lime gelato at the store before I watched it. I ate the gelato that night, and it was actually really good. Anyway, they know that the energy signature, Alpha told them the energy signature is coming from underground, and they just so happen to see a tour guide getting ready to take a tour down into the catacombs. Marv and Jack decide to use some cop tactics here, pretending to be Interpol agents that are investigating the catacombs since they had heard that they were not safe. The other Rangers join in, and the guide ends up buying this, but wants to take them down into the catacombs to show them that it's perfectly safe. The team honestly gets a little bit confused here as to their directives, as half of them think that they are going to need a guide down there, while the other half remember that one of the key themes of this episode is protect civilians and don't endanger them. Malika decides to get them out of this by having the tour guide give them a map of the catacombs and letting them go on their own. They head down into the catacombs and notice a dark figure moving around down there when the catacombs are supposed to be empty right now. Chloe sneakily follows it and realizes that it's a putty. Marv wants to morph, but Jack points out that it's far too crowded to fight effectively down here, and they might damage some of the important artifacts. They follow the putty and see it join up with 2 others, as well as a white dog man wearing a blue apron. Yes, they have found Finster, who is examining the artwork and the frescoes and the sculptures, while musing to himself that he ran away from Lord Zed because he wasn't appreciated there. Chloe realizes that Finster's feelings are hurt, so the Rangers think maybe they can just talk to Finster. Eddie volunteers to lead the conversation, but Vesper gives him her future-reading hologram generator just to be safe. He rolls a bolt so none of the bad guys notice as he activates it, and they see Finster seated upon a throne of skulls, with the putties in the room treating him like royalty. Clearly there's no violence in the 30 seconds into the future, so they decide to go ahead and head in to talk to Finster. They pretend to be a group of tourists that were specifically seeking Finster out since he's famed for being such an amazing artist. Finster starts to recognize Aisha, so Jack steps in front of her all big. Finster is very pleased to be around a group of apparently excited art appreciators, and Marv asks to know more about his particular art. Finster asks Marv what his greatest fear is. Marv answers the question honestly. He doesn't want to let others down. Eddie tries to divert the conversation by asking what Finster's working on right now, but it turns out the two of those are related. Finster starts out by molding a regular putty, but he gives it bigger muscles and especially a large mouth. This ended up being dubbed the Bully Putty, and as Finster creates it into reality, it taunts Marv for being such a big letdown. As it continues to taunt a shell-shocked Marv, even throwing skulls at him, which he doesn't even try to defend. Malika gave him the option, he didn't even roll for it, just standing there. Eddie asks if Finster is leaving Lord Zed and going independent. Finster says that he happily served Rita Repulsa, but to Lord Zed, his creations are nothing more than slaves. The Bully Putty turns to Chloe and asks what her greatest fear is. But by now, the Rangers have caught on, so Chloe says that her greatest fear is that she is terrified of rainbows and sprinkles. The Bully Putty just goes, ugh, and starts throwing skulls at her. This rouses Marv, who shoves it away. Finster is so thrilled to be around a captive audience that he can't even decide what to make, throwing together some creations and then throwing those away and doing others. The Rangers appeal to his artistic, creative nature, saying that he can do so much more than just create monsters that hurt people. Jack specifically asks what they can do to help him do better. He leads them up above ground to kind of a side chamber of the Coliseum that's been filled with statues and frescoes and various artworks and etc., and says that he wishes he could be a part of the wonderful artwork that is Rome. Suddenly there's an explosion in the main arena, and the Rangers look out and see that Vulcanos and Scorpina have arrived. They see Finster admiring the artwork and laugh at him. Marv tells them off and defends Finster, which impresses him. However, as Bully Putty returns to the scene, Vulcanos says that he has some impressive art of his own to show Finster, and animates the three statues. Marv tries to keep Finster with them, but he wanders over to examine the animated statues. Aisha rallies her troops, assigning Vesper, Marv, and Chloe to take on the three statues, Eddie and Jack to take on Vulcanos, and she'll take on Scorpina one-on-one. Vesper uses her triple threat to attack all three statues at once. She only rolls a 5, but that is still enough to take out the woman statue. Jack uses his Ram Rage Rush to plow through the fighter statue. These things aren't actually as strong as they seem. The Bully Putty starts laughing at Marv again, but now he says that his friends have given him confidence. This worries the Bully Putty, who swipes at Marv but misses. Marv lunges, doing a spin attack through the Bully Putty, bouncing off the nearby wall and coming back and hitting it on the way back. It collapses and crumbles. Chloe has Aisha toss her into the air to fire a volley of arrows from her Hyperion bow. The Senator statue tries to shield itself, but the arrows pierce right through and it is also destroyed. Scorpina steps up to Aisha, a familiar foe, and throws her boomerang sword tail at her. However, Aisha pulls her power daggers and deflects it away. She then also pulls her blade blaster and turns to Eddie for help. Everybody's jumping off everybody these days. It's apparently the new Ranger thing. However, Aisha has a spin on it this time, grabbing Eddie once she's in the air and flinging him at Vulcanos. Apparently this was kind of a confusing session, as even I got a little bit confused here. It sounded like they said Aisha rolled a bolt and a 6. I kind of thought the bolt was the 6, or maybe they were just saying that she rolled 2 of them. Whatever the case, it ended up being more than enough to succeed. Aisha jumps up and slashes Scorpina right across the face with her power daggers, hitting for 8 damage. Finster finally approaches Vulcanos, but Vulcanos just snatches away that bag of magic clay. He takes the tiniest little piece of it and flicks it towards the Rangers. It rolls around on the ground, rolling and forming and shaping, and finally turning into a 7-foot-tall Roman gladiator. Finster is in awe at what he now sees as a superior artist, and he runs away. Marv tries another team-up attack with Chloe, and once again rolls badly and the attack misses. Jack tells the Rangers to follow Aisha's lead. She instructs the Rangers to get these creatures outside of the Coliseum so she can summon the Griffin Zord to fight them. Marv and Chloe stay on the ground, to Chloe's disappointment, and for some reason removing their helmets to come up with a free gelato promotion that will lead people away from the Coliseum. Vulcanos looks to the sky and calls out to the Alliance leader, asking for dark, evil power. A bolt strikes down from the sky, and the gladiator goes giant-sized. Aisha summons her Zord and says that this time, Vesper can drive. However, Vesper quickly realizes that this Zord requires Yellow Ranger power. So, Aisha and Jack team up for a dual fireball attack. However, the gladiator is able to spin out of the way and they miss, instead hitting the Coliseum and doing some damage. Jack channels his Ram Rage Rush attack through the Zord, which does hit the gladiator, but they kind of glance off of it. Marv says, hey, third time's the charm, right? For him and Chloe to do a team-up attack. They put their helmets back on and they try it. However, they are not only on the ground attacking a giant monster, they are some way away from it, so their attack's not even able to reach it. Scorpina and Vulcanos are really enjoying the show, but they realize they have no reason to stay when they have what they came for, so they decide to leave. The Rangers all hop into the Griffin Zord and channel their combined power into its fireball attack, which Eddie launches. The fireball attack splits around the gladiator's sword and hits it on both sides, melting it. In what I think was actually the best moment of the session, Vesper climbs up to the top of the Coliseum, looks down at the crowd that's gathered, and declares, "We are the Power Rangers, and we just saved all of you. Bye." Alpha tells the Rangers that there's another message coming in from Zordon, so they hop back into the Griffin Thunder Zord and head back to Angel Grove. Zordon congratulates the team on their victory, but does point out the new damage to the Coliseum. They tell Zordon it would have been even worse if not for Aisha, and she was a huge help. Unfortunately, Zordon says that her team needs her once again. Marv gives her the business card of the gelato guy in Rome to give to Ernie because he had a local guy for some kind of hookup. I didn't really catch that. Chloe gives her a strange cheeseburger candy spaghetti burrito, which she says that she's going to share with the rest of her team. Zordon immediately nixes this idea because, of course, Aisha can't say a single word about what's happened since it involves the future. Jack and Aisha shake hands as Aisha turns into energy and disappears. This was a fun session, to be sure, but not a consistent one. I don't know this for certain. I don't have any of the insider information, but if I had to guess, I would say they got Karan Ashley at the very last minute, and that led to them not being entirely sure what to do with Aisha in this story. They spent over half of this session training that didn't even end up going anywhere. They shut the thing off halfway through and just go back to the plot. It was like a Ninja Steel filler episode. Or, I guess, a Ninja Steel episode. It was great, not just seeing Finster again, but getting some real depth added to his character in regards to Lord Zedd's takeover. However, they were starting to do this thing where maybe he was going to switch sides, try to help the Rangers, and it was just never resolved, and it got kind of confusing. Scorpina and Vulcanos escaped basically because the Rangers just didn't do enough about them in time, and the whole thing just felt a little messy. In the end, when you're going to have a guest actor from the show's past, I feel like the story should focus more on them and they shouldn't just be there. When Aaron Cahill guested, Jen was a major factor of that part of the story. In this case, it just feels like Aisha was there because she's the one that Zordon happened to pick, and when her episode was up, she teleports into the sky and things go right back to normal. Hey now, not every session can be a hit, and actually in a funny way there's one part of this that does reassure me. When you add in a guest star and it kind of messes with the balance, it shows you how good the core of the show is. The balance between all of these characters and the strength of the improvisation, if you will, not as so much writing. So overall, this session wasn't as good as the others, but it's not anything that concerns me to any great deal. Chaos in the Coliseum gets a 3 out of 5. That's going to wrap up another Power Rangers Hyperforce session review. Thank you folks so much as always for watching. Make sure to like the video by clicking that like button right down below. In the comments below, tell me what you thought of this session. Did you think it was better than I did? Or maybe you thought it was worse than I did? Let me know down in the comments below. And like I always say, thumpers, check in. Love hearing from you folks. Make sure you subscribe to the channel to see all of my videos and set up your notifications so you get notified of whenever I post brand new videos like these Power Rangers Hyperforce session reviews. And this is not something you have to do. I had somebody comment the other day and say that they felt bad that they couldn't pay me, and I said, hey, don't even worry about it. This is not something you have to do, but if you would like to just toss me a little bit of tip money, a little bit in the tip jar for my videos, you can head over to digitaltipjar.com/orangerangervid. You can toss me whatever kind of little bit of financial support you can. I would be more than grateful for anything anybody tosses in that tip jar. But again, you don't have to. I appreciate you watching, sharing the videos, commenting, etc., etc., etc. So thank you for watching, and until next time, may the power protect you, and go Hyperforce. The Rangers start discussing. I don't even know where that came from. Like sometimes the Rangers start discussing their mission. Oh, mission. Discussing their mission is discussing. Vesper starts reading it to her, and the girl even interrupts Chloe's, see, I tried to ad-lib and I screwed it up. They remember soup. They remember soup. Soup is tomato, soup, hot, plain tomato soup. Vesper calls the little girl back into the library in order to say goodbye, saying that Jack even tells her that they have read about her in their history books. Zordon tells Aisha to assist this brand new team. This is not a brand new team. Jack even tells Aisha that they have read about her in their history books, which amazes her. Marv asks for 3 civilians since Aisha said that being parts. Slow down, Sean. Malika, as Alpha, asks the Rangers to describe Pudgy Pig so she can to strike their Z targets, destroying 2 putties. However, they never really were good at that copying thing, and they topple over. The Zord takes off, and they hop out and fart. But offers to take them down into the catacombs to show them that it's perfectly safe. However, however is a song that goes hoo. They decide to follow the putty, and the putty does a dance, and then turns around and stabs each one of them in the face. I don't know. Chloe realizes Finster's feelings are hurt, so they think that they can think that they can think that they can think that they can think. Chloe oh gosh, sharking fart. He activates it, and they see Eddie rolling a Bolt 6. They also see me forgetting to mention that. He acted Bolt freaking 6! Clearly there's no violence ahead of them in the future, so they decide to go ahead and Aisha summons the Griffin Zord. She sure does, doesn't she?